The plank again. The saddest thing about betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies. Maya Angelou. (2012). I conveniently tucked away those strange events and returned to my daily routine. The burden of micromanaging the hotel from a distance was lifted, and I filled my time caring for the kids, dancing salsa, and practicing Tai Chi in the garden. When the school year came to an end, Melanie decided to come and live with us. Her presence was a comforting addition, and I enjoyed watching her develop a close bond with her half-siblings as they spent hours together creating macrame jewelry and other fun crafts. Melanie's artistic spirit brought a new sense of joy and creativity into our home, and she filled the void after Isabel graduated and returned to Roatan. Melanie stayed with us for an entire year, but by the end she was ready for a change and decided to move on to the farm to live with her father. We planned a drive to visit Pierre so we could help Melanie relocate her belongings. I was nervous about the long drive. Despite having traveled far and wide, I had never driven 7 hours by myself in one stretch. We woke up early that morning with the sun just beginning to rise. I loaded the car and anxiously double-checked the map before we set off on our cross-country journey. Leaving Panama, I took the Bridge of the Americas, where we could see the vast expanse of the Panama Canal glistening below us. We continued on a coastal highway, and the scenery shifted from bustling cityscape to the lush green of the countryside. The road stretched endlessly ahead, and I kept my hands firmly on the steering wheel. With Melanie's presence, the drive felt more manageable. The kids chatted happily in the back seat, filling the car with a sense of excitement. 6 hours later, when we reached the city of David, the second largest city in Panama, the air grew heavy and humid. David is famous for being an industrial city, and the heat was oppressive, the kind that makes your clothes stick to your skin. From there, we ascended to the quaint mountain village of Boquete. We passed through and kept driving higher into the mountains towards the Amistad National Park. I marveled at the transformation in the landscape as we climbed higher. We reached a river flanked by coffee plantations, and the aroma of fresh coffee beans wafted through the open windows. The sight of the neat rows of coffee plants against the rolling hills was a welcome relief to what felt like an endless drive. If only the journey ended here, I thought. But the road continued farther up into the mountains until we reached the hamlet called Los Naranjos. This was the meeting point where the paved road ended and the unpaved road began. Pierre was there waiting, ready to put chains on my car wheels for the final stretch to the farm. The ground was slippery with wet mud, and in certain corners the road was perilously close to the edge. Tired from the long drive, I navigated the challenging terrain, muttering at every bump and turn. I glanced over at Melanie and saw that she looked as nervous as I felt. Her tight grip on the edge of her seat mirrored my own grip on the steering wheel. Shit. Oh my God. No. Whoa, I exclaimed, my heart pounding. The kids sat quietly in the back seat, holding their breath. When we arrived, we followed Pierre and parked in front of a rundown shack, and I couldn't contain my reaction. Melanie giggled when she saw the shack and gave me a knowing look. I got out of the car and looked at Pierre, my eyes wide with disbelief. Is this it? I questioned him, pointing to the shack. Yes, this is our castle, he said with a broad smile, kissing Melanie on both cheeks. Right, my dear? Yes, Papa, she answered, looking at me with eyes that said she felt the same way I did. I noticed that Pierre was in much better spirits than when he lived with us in Panama, and I quietly wondered if it was the mountain air that had triggered this change, or whether it was something else entirely. Is there electricity in the castle? I inquired, already suspecting the answer. No, but there are plenty of candles, he offered cheerfully. As I walked up the steps to the deck, I noticed that some planks were rotting. I pointed them out to the kids so they would be careful. Don't worry so much, Pierre said with a dismissive wave. Come on, Pierre. Remember how Emily fell on her face and broke her tooth in Morocco? I reminded him bitterly. I thought he had been watching her while I was resting from a long hike. Yes, dear, but she's older now. Then he turned to Emily and said, You're more careful now, right, my darling? She nodded and said, "Yes, Papa," before running off to play with Olivier. "Olivier, wait for me," she yelled in a shrill voice, making me cringe each time she shrieked his name. "She's accident-prone, Pierre. She falls through any crack," I muttered as I pushed the door open to look inside. The smell of rotting wood wafted into my nostrils, a pungent reminder of the dilapidated state of the shack. "I guess if there isn't any electricity, there isn't any hot water either," I stated, though it came out more as a question. "No, there isn't hot water either, but cold showers are very healthy," he insisted, while I made a mental note to heat water on the stove to wash up before bed. I pointed out patches of plywood that covered up rotting areas in the floor and took note of the buckets collecting rainwater leaking through the roof. "This was the only house you could find close to the property?" I asked him, to which he nodded sympathetically. Despite my displeasure with the shack, I set out to settle in as best I could. Later that day, through the large living room window, I watched the setting sun paint rich colors across the sky, showcasing the Baru volcano with its majestic silhouette in the twilight, and I found a silver lining in the rotting house. "Well, at least there's that, right? Positivity," I sighed heavily, trying to hold on to any semblance of optimism I could. The candles carried a warm glow as the cool mountain air set upon us. Wrapped in blankets to combat the cold, I could sense the gloomy loneliness that settled between us. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows on the walls, and the silence was thick, filled with unspoken words and lingering doubts. I could no longer ignore the signs. I knew my time alone in the city was coming to an end, and I had to make the important decision to get the family back together again. The sense of impending change was as palpable as the chill in the air, and I knew that this visit would mark a turning point for all of us. The next day, when we had a moment alone, I felt I couldn't hold back any longer. I needed answers. We left the kids with Melanie and drove into town for supplies. My chest tightened and I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Pierre, you are spending a lot of time at Audrey's hostel," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "Do you really need that much construction material from there?" I forced myself to meet his eyes. "What is going on with you two?" I finally asked him directly, my heart pounding in my chest so loudly I was sure he could hear it. He looked at me, his expression serious. "I'm in love with her," he said. His words landed as if he had taken a frying pan and smacked me in the stomach. The air seemed to leave the car, and I felt as if I couldn't breathe. "What?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely a whisper, my throat tight with dread. "She wanted me to tell you, but I didn't know how," he said. "We've been seeing each other since I moved here on my own," he continued, his words landing heavily, leaving me stunned. He spoke with a kind of resigned calm, as if it weren't the betrayal that it was. My mind was reeling. Memories of the past year flooded back, every suspicious moment, every unexplained absence, now making painful sense. "You've been lying to me this whole time?" I asked. "How could you do this to me, to us?" My hands were shaking, and I clenched them into fists to stop trembling. Pierre sighed, looking weary. "I didn't want it to happen this way," he said softly, "but I can't change how I feel. I'm sorry." "Sorry?" I spat the word out, feeling a surge of outrage. "You think saying sorry will make this better? You've broken up our family, Pierre. You betrayed me." "I never meant to hurt you. I fell in love with her. It wasn't planned." "An entire year of lies and deceit? You could have told me," I shrieked, swallowing a sob that was rising in my throat. "You could have been honest." "I didn't know how," he said, sounding helpless. "I didn't want to lose you, but I also couldn't deny my feelings for her. I thought that we could stay together, the three of us." The car suddenly felt unbearably small, closing in around me. I needed to get out, to breathe, to think. I opened the door, pausing for a moment. "I need some time," I said quietly, "to process this, to figure out what comes next." He nodded, his face a mask of sorrow. "Take all the time you need," he said. "I'll be here." Audrey knew I wasn't happy in my relationship with Pierre. This was her way of offering me a way to leave. She knew that this was what I needed to do. She was telling me to leave and go learn to be me again, but I felt she was pushing me before I was ready. Will I ever be ready? I wondered, my mind spinning. I got back into the car, and we didn't say much more to each other for the rest of the day. The gravity of Pierre's revelation hit me hard that night. Not wanting to wake up the kids, I lay outside on the decrepit wooden planks and cried inconsolably. The night air was cold and damp, and the rough wood beneath me did nothing to comfort my aching body or heart. Why do I feel so much resentment all the time? I asked myself through my tears. Maybe if I hadn't been so angry, if I didn't complain so much, if I'd been more understanding. I felt that I had sabotaged all the good in my relationship with my negative behavior. I was mad at Audrey for lying to me, but I blamed myself for Pierre's choices. How did I get so dependent on this man and become so afraid to live on my own? I wondered. The stars above me seemed indifferent to my pain. I used to be so daring, so full of courage. Why didn't I leave 10 years ago when I knew things were starting to go wrong? I lay in my sleeping bag on the smelly plank, asking myself these difficult questions, mourning everything I was losing, and filled with a deep sense of dread about what the future might bring. That night, I lay there until the sun began to rise, its soft light casting long shadows and bringing in a new day. In the morning, when my tears had dried up, I picked myself up off the plank, feeling a strange sense of clarity. I piled the kids back into the car, leaving Melanie behind in the shack with Pierre, and drove back to Panama City. I had preparations to make. As I drove, I knew it was time to embrace the lessons from the book Kate wanted me to read and learn so long ago in Israel. It was time to reclaim my courage and forge a new path for myself and my children.